women terrorists talking in my head with a war weapon. Do you hear me? I can't capture their psychotic voices on my live stream. I want them sentenced to death. Okay? They keep telling me to go fuck myself. They're Egyptian American Muslim women. These aren't humble women. These are psychopaths. I will never in my life self-explain. There are Egyptian American Muslim women psychopath serial killers talking in my head with a war weapon. There are Egyptian American Muslim women terrorists talking in my head with a war weapon. They're trying to get me to commit suicide or find a way to murder me and get away with it, so that they can get the records with the telepathy weapon that they're using destroyed. They're trying to ruin my image in front of everyone and make it look like I do drugs, which I don't, and I will gladly like I used to take Phentermine to drop weight. Thank God for Wegovy now. I don't mind taking it. I don't care at this point of it. So they don't want me getting too old, and like they're trying to use my looks as a way to twist my arm. Like, you'll get fat, you dumb bitch. Like a man is gonna the entire world, nobody knows that these terrorists are using this weapon, and the government is trying to clear all the records produced with the weapon that they're using to talk in my head. Not clear them, but they're trying to make sure that they don't get destroyed, so that these terrorists talking in my head get convicted and sentenced to death. And these bitches, they're after getting them destroyed. It's the weapon itself does a self-assessment, and basically it runs through a system that reads, like, so it filters like what it'll take the records once they investigate something, for example, and the investigation has been concluded. The records produced, it goes through this like filing system or this filtering system, and that filter system basically looks for cues like, am I in the same room with people that don't hear the voices in my head? Is there video footage to see if they can layer up the records to see if there are any other audio footage that capture the video of the voices I heard or not, to distinguish if it's internal or external. Other thing is, if I'm working consistently and I come from a family where there are no neurological disorders and everybody is successful and succeeding, and I'm making it to work consistently. I don't do drugs, I don't drink, I don't party. It will start to flag the records. Like, okay, there's nothing that it sees as could possibly be the cause of hearing voices and having a mental handicap, because they're shocking my head and they're literally handicapping me so I can't read or add or copy and paste something. into from one from ChatGPT into an email. Like they don't like that's how handicapped they make me. Um, so the government wants to go through these records when, God forbid, and hopefully not when I die, but whenever they get to them, to see if these terrorists are with this they may be sentenced to death by capital punishment, a beheading. They could be hung. However, the governments across the globe see it fit for these terrorists talking in my head, and then they want the money. They're following the money that these terrorists are laundering, because this is all over them laundering money. They basically find their way into a small little crevice hole. They're like roaches, and once they get in, it's like it opens the door to a much bigger network, and that network is, it's into a municipality, and then they say, oh well, this municipality is in this county, and this county is in this state, and this state, and this until they make their way up the ranks without flagging the federal government to align themselves to do a side-by-side investigation, or to make sure to oversee these terrorists while they're investigating, quote unquote investigating. And so they're this is how these psychopath serial killer snake like roachy leechy psycho terrorists talking in my head operate. Okay. So that's why they don't want it to be, obviously, if it was Elon Musk, someone who's offering, and honestly, any one of us, I'm not saying that anybody of these terrorists, uh, anybody that's been a suspect could have possibly had the same potential, and nobody would know. I mean, well, really, who knows? It's just they're retarding people from the day they're born. But they, so anyways, that's, it's neither here or there. It's, it's all relevant, but the issues are that they need the U.S. government wants the records produced with the weapon that they're using to talk into my head, okay? And they're not going to let anything get in the way of getting to those records, and thank God for that. And all I want to do is I want to seal any other tiny little gaps that these terrorists talking in my head keep making obvious are there, so that they're like, I want to flag these records like it's nobody's fucking business. Because in order for for the world to operate, okay, um, and feel like it's fair, okay, the weapon has to do its own unbiased self-assessment. And every country argues, oh, we need this to protect ourselves, or we need this added to protect ourselves, and they make their argument and they do this, and then that's how the security measures are um and if in fact, like, it's like 100% everyone agrees, yes, this is and this is something like it's theory I'm coming up with, but I believe this is pretty close to the truth of how the weapon operates. Once they see, yes, this is actually more of a benefit than it is a detriment, they add a security to the weapon, and that's how they securitize it, so that it's an unbiased reading. So it's not like any personal person saying, okay, I want to investigate these people's records, for example, and just target one group that's using the weapon. So it the weapon itself, it does a self-assessment, and it's all based on like these cues that the world governments, or whoever has come together to say, yes, this is ethically and utterly important to have, right? And to cue the records. And so at this point, it's like I'm reading into these the women, the bitches talking in my head, the terrorist women talking in my head, they're Egyptian American Muslim women terrorists. They're the ones who made all this huge area, this huge chunk of hair fall out of my head. Okay, chunks of hair. I had like 98% of my hair fell out. Those stupid bitches, they're the ones who get hysterical, and they play on the men's um emotions, the terrorist women, because they're like, oh, we're gonna get sentenced to death, we're gonna get sentenced to death, and they start crying and screaming and getting hysterical, and they work up their fucking stupid psycho men, and then their men get more violent and more aggressive and more psycho. I swear to God, I swear to God. And it's all like this mind game, because now they're seeing how the mind works, and they use these little tactics, what it seems like, use these little tactics on each other to like stimulate each other, and then they want to look like they're crying, like they're not victims, that they're actually, or they're not, that they're victims. So like the more the government, like the more do they commit these crimes, the more the government wants to attack, wants to sentence them to death, the more they like they in their heads they start to think, oh, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die. So to manipulate, in case anyone is to investigate them, it reads that they're like actually in a state of alarm or something. Like they play all these fucking weird sick games with themselves, with the people that they're with the people that they're using the weapon on. I mean, like, obviously it's not as simple as what they're doing to each other. We're talking, they're causing brain damage and mutilating and like rotting someone's arm till they have to amputate their arms. They're Egyptian American Muslim women terrorists. These are the world's most these are the most criminal acts ever done, ever on the face of this fucking planet. And not just that, these bitches want to fucking spread their fucking legs and have fucking kids with these terrorist men, and then put their kids in positions of power over us, the victims, so we never ever have a chance to go back after them and sentence them to fucking death. Do you hear me? I want them to fucking die. They're talking in my fucking head. This is fucking disgusting. I'm at work. I want them to die. My entire office knows that I'm sick. Nobody's ever seen me like this in my family. Ever. Ever. These bitches have to go. They're Egyptian American Muslim women terrorists. They're talking in my head. All I want to do is make it clear they're fucking sick and they need to be sentenced to death. I'm going to do everything. Look, the men are like, they do something with your head. Thank you, God. I'm going to clear these records. Every time I say I want them sentenced to death, he makes it seem like I'm out to murder them. It's not murder. Like, it's the sensation of like these false, like, feelings. And luckily I know myself. Like, I'm not that type. If I see somebody as sick as these terrorists, I'm gonna take them to court and I'm gonna sentence them to death gracefully, if I can make it there. And if I can't, I'm gonna leave as much evidence as possible, so that if I die, justice does prevail. I want them, she's like, justice prevails. She's talking in my head. And they do that to make me feel like I'm stupid, so that I get angry, so that I don't cry. Earlier today, they caused me such a panic attack that I had to run into my uncle's office, and I started bawling from like how aggressive the attacks were. I couldn't even copy and paste. They're handicapping me, and they're like, you fucking bitch, oh, you're not making fucking money, why are you even fucking going to work, we're fucking up all your fucking deals, bitch, your daughter, hear this, we're gonna talk in your daughter's head, bitch, we're gonna talk in your, they're Egyptian American Muslim women. I want them, look, he's trying to fill me with hate, but I do hate them. I want them to die. I would spit on them before and after they get sentenced to death. That's a fact after what I found out about these fucking trash cans. And how many people will feel the same way when they find out these terrorists are doing this to so many people and what they've been doing. I swear to God, the earth itself, okay, it will swallow up these terrorists alive. They're done. Let this get out, and these bitches are goners. And honest to God, and they know how badly I want it. They want to hurt me. The men are like, we want to stab you to death. They're talking in my head. They're talking in my head right now. Like, I just want to fucking murder this bitch. I just want to murder this bitch. They keep saying it. Like they're fiends. And then the bitches turn around and sleep with the men talking in my head that keep saying, I want to murder this bitch about me in my head. It's the women, please. I want the men to watch them get sentenced to death. I want to show them all the real men on this planet. Okay, because they're talking in my head like, we're men. And I'm like, whoa, well, there are a lot of men, and you guys aren't the only men, and most men aren't. Like, the entire planet they're not terrorists. It's just like this small little segment of terrorists. Like, this gets out in the, like, you'll see some men, all right? Like, I'm really want to fucking make it clear. And not only that, when these men find out these women, all these men are out there that are sexy, successful, intelligent, are there and would die for their women, and the terrorist women that are sleeping with the men, murdering all these kids, and the wars and this, and when they find out these horrors talking in my head were sleeping with these psycho terrorist men, and they look down at they look at them, they're done. These women are fucking done. And after all the gorgeous women these terrorist women murdered, that these men missed out on because the terrorist women in my head want to get away with the money they laundered, and after all the murders they fucking committed. I'm talking about, like, this is genocide on a massive scale. The entire African American community. They're like, your cousins are looking. That's fine. The terrorists are saying, your cousins think you're off. Your cousins think you're off. Because they're insecure. The terrorists talking in my head are insecure that it's obvious that they're causing me, they're making me unstable, and they're hurting my head. They're causing me disability. And to people who don't know about this weapon, I look handicapped. I mean, I am handicapped, but like even more handicapped. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm just like, I know what's going on. It's just, I don't know how to explain it. Like, they are handicapping me, but I'm not. But I know what's going on. I'm being handicapped. Not, I legitimately have a, like, biological handicap. Someone is playing with my mind and retarding me. And in front of everyone else's eyes, it looks like, yeah, absolutely. But they think it's like, it's just self-induced. It's like, not self-induced, but like my mind is doing it to itself. Like, they don't know that these terrorists have possession of these weapons. Dude. I want these bitches sentenced to death. They're Egyptian American Muslim women terrorists. Please, U.S. government. I'll do anything. I will do anything you need me to do. Especially, these terrorists are murdering me one way or the other. I don't have shit to lose. Please, show yourself some way. Explain to me how do I flag these records? I want the women to get what they deserve. I want them to get what they deserve. Mm. Filipino.
flipping a property within 180 days, not 6 months, you need to have a okay, we got it. Okay, like going over 20 times over this just to make sure that we get it right. Now, the other thing that the 7, it's a new addition. The 7 is a new addition that is not contemplated in the other ones, but it's contemplated under MDAIA as an amendment to TILA, all right? Because MDAIA is an amendment to TILA. And the 7-day rule basically goes like this. Once you have disclosed to the borrower, let's say the loan estimate in this case, right? You do the loan estimate disclosure, right? And you have given them the 3 days to do the disclosure, right? You cannot close escrow, you cannot consummate the loan, you cannot fund the transaction until 7 days after the disclosures have been provided to the consumer. Now, I know what you're thinking because that's the first thing I thought as well. I thought that, but who closes escrow in 7 days, right? Like, I mean, very, very hardly we're gonna be able to close an escrow right now within 7 days. But you also have to remember when this law came into place. This law came into place at the end of 2008. And at the end of 2008, we still had stated income loans, stated asset loans. We had loans that you didn't know, you didn't need anything other than a loan application and a credit report. There was no verification of anything. There was no verification of employment. There was no verification of Social Security. There was no verification of IRS taxes. There was no verification of bank statements. There was no verifications of anything. That means that you can go from disclosure to funding in 24 hours because there was no verification of anything. You can literally go from disclosure to funding in 24 hours, right? You sign the document, you sign the disclosures today, we can fund tomorrow. But the government said that's not enough time. That is not enough, and that is not enough time for people to really understand and know what they're getting involved into, right? So the government said, no, you have to give them 7 days. 7 days is the minimum, is the bare minimum that you have to give them to review those documents, to make sure they're okay with them, to make sure that, you know, if they want to take it to an attorney, counselor, family member, whatever, they can do that. And that's what this 373 rule is. So basically, the 3 day, the first 3 represents the 3 day after the application is completed. You have to disclose the loan. 3 days, the last 3 represents the 3 days prior to the consummation of the loan. You have to disclose again. And the 7 represents that you cannot fund the transaction until 7 days after those disclosures were given to the consumer. And that's basically what that means. Okay, so that's that. And here's kind of like a timeline on how that happens. So initial disclosure day, step number 1. 7 days later is the mandatory waiting period for funding. If any material changes happen, then you need to redisclose the file. You need to issue a corrective disclosure or a disclosure for that matter. And then 3 business days later, you wait for 3 business days prior to the consummation of the loan to reissue the final disclosures, and then you can fund the transaction 3 days after. So this is kind of what the guideline on how it works. Okay. Okay. So that's that. All right. And that's all you need to know regarding MDIA. Like I told you, MDIA is super simple. It's 373. It's not that complicated. And then we go to the last one. We go to the last legislation, the last piece of legislation we're going to talk about today. The last piece of legislation is called ECOA, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. It is also called Regulation B. Now, how do you remember that ECOA is Regulation B? Easy. Just remember to be equal. If you be equal, you remember that ECOA is Regulation B. Now, what is Regulation B? What is ECOA? ECOA is an anti-discrimination law. Anti-discrimination. That's the first and foremost, that's the most important thing regarding ECOA. Now, ECOA. Sex was the original one. Marital status, age, the receipt of public assistance, and the exercise rights under the Consumer Protection Act including PILA. Okay, so watch this now. So ECOA now includes protected classes. We call them protected classes. That's what we call them, right? Protected classes. And the protected classes are race, color, religion, national origin, sex, marital status, age, receipt of public assistance, and the exercise rights of the Consumer Protection Act. Those are the classes that are incorporated in one law. That means that you cannot discriminate anyone on the basis of any of this. And that's what ECOA does. All right? Now, beyond that, beyond an anti-discrimination law, ECOA also gives you some guidelines in regards to credit applications. Okay, so it gives you credit application procedures. It gives you appraisal disclosures procedures, credit evaluations, loan pricing, servicing, and collection practices. So beyond the anti-discrimination, they also do a couple of other things, which we will cover in a second, but that's mainly what they do. So let's talk about protected classes. Okay, protected classes prohibit discrimination among all the classes that I just mentioned to you right now. Okay, number one. Number two, adverse notices, adverse action notices. So this is what ECOA says. If you were denied for credit, if you applied for credit and you were denied, watch this. You have the right to receive something in writing that tells you whether or not you were denied in person. You have to receive something in writing that tells you this, right? And if you were denied, if you were approved, that's not a problem. You were approved, congratulations to you, bravo, blah, 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 right? But if you were denied, guess what's going to happen? The creditor has to tell you the specific reason why you were denied. They have to tell you the specific reason why. And the reason for that is because ECOA thinks if you know the specific reason why you were denied for credit, you can fix that problem so you can apply again. Because what ECOA is trying to do is ECOA is trying to make everybody be worthy of getting credit. And that's basically what that is, right? ECOA wants everybody to have the ability to get credit if they can and they qualify for it, etc. That's the thing, right? So an adverse action notice is a letter that the creditor sends you that says, I'm sorry to tell you, you were denied for credit. Well, guess what? In that letter, they have to let you know the reason why, the specific reason why you were denied. They cannot just tell you, we looked at your credit report and we didn't like what we found, so we deny your credit. No, that doesn't work. They have to tell you the specific reason. We deny your credit because your FICO score is too low or below a certain number. We deny your credit because of your transaction history, or we deny your credit because you have too many credits open right now. Whatever the reason may be, they have to tell you so you can work on that reason, fix it, and go to that quality. So that's important to know. Alright? So you know that's we call it an ECOA covers a few things, right? Appraisal disclosures. You have to give your consumers, you as a mortgage loan officer in your company has to give the consumers a letter for the consumer called the right to receive an appraisal report. It's an actual form. That's what it's called. If you recognize it, that's what it says exactly. It says the right to receive a copy of an appraisal report. And the right to receive a copy of an appraisal report is a form that you have to